Take a moment to think about your morning routine today. You woke up, walked to the kitchen, made your coffee, checked your phone, brushed your teeth, and initiated your day. How much of that sequence did you actively, consciously choose to execute? According to extensive behavioral research, over 40% of the decisions you make every single day are not decisions at all. They are completely automated subroutines running inside your subconscious mind. You are a walking compilation of habits. Your financial status, your physical fitness, your mental health, and your career trajectory are simply the compounding lagging metrics of the daily habits your brain runs on autopilot. But how do these loops take control of our biology? And how can we step into the engine room of our own mind to completely reprogram them? Today, we break down the 10 neurological stages of behavioral reengineering to see exactly how habits are born, wired, and permanently locked into the human brain. Stage 1. The frictionless cue. The architecture of any habit, good or bad, initiates with Stage 1, the frictionless cue. Your brain is an incredibly sophisticated prediction engine, constantly scanning the environment to look for signals that lead to a biological reward. A cue is a visual, auditory, emotional, or environmental trigger that commands your brain to launch a habit loop. It can be the sound of a notification ping, the physical sight of a couch after a long workday, or an internal feeling of boredom or stress. The choice architects of your life create cues that are highly visible and completely frictionless. If a cue is hidden or difficult to perceive, the habit loop will never launch. True behavioral change begins when you learn to deliberately manipulate your environment to make good cues blindingly obvious and bad cues completely invisible. Stage 2, the emergence of craving. The moment your brain perceives a cue, it jumps into Stage 2, the emergence of craving. Contrary to popular belief, a craving isn't a desire for the habit itself. It is a desperate desire for the emotional or chemical state change that the habit promises to deliver. Neuroscientific studies show that a massive spike of dopamine shoots through your reward pathways before you execute the habit. Your brain anticipates the pleasure or the relief that is coming. When you look at a smartphone screen, you don't crave the piece of glass. Your brain craves the hit of social validation or novelty waiting inside the app. The craving acts as the engine fuel, generating the psychological tension required to force your body into physical action. Stage 3, the response threshold. With the craving established, the habit reaches Stage 3, the response threshold, the point where action either happens or doesn't. The deciding factor is friction. Your brain naturally tries to conserve energy, so behaviors that require less effort are far more likely to occur. To build a good habit, reduce friction by making the action easy and accessible. To break a bad habit, increase friction by making it harder and less convenient. In the end, your brain almost always follows the path of least resistance. Stage 4, the reward delivery. Stage 4 is the critical destination that cements the behavior, the reward delivery. This is the exact moment you eat the sugar, hit the validation notification, or finish the intense workout. The reward serves 2 vital evolutionary purposes inside your nervous system. First, it satisfies your active craving, providing immediate pleasure or a profound relief from stress. Second, it teaches your brain exactly which actions are worth remembering for the future. As the reward hits your system, your brain releases a wave of neurochemicals that look back at the cue and the response, writing a line of code in your memory that says, "This sequence worked perfectly. Remember to repeat it the next time you see this trigger." Stage 5, the habit loop stabilization. As this 3-step sequence of cue, response, and reward is repeated over days and weeks, the behavior enters Stage 5, stabilization. The neurological pathways controlling the habit undergo a profound structural transformation. The control of the behavior shifts out of the prefrontal cortex, the energy-intensive area responsible for conscious thought and willpower, and migrates deep into the basal ganglia. This is the primitive, highly automated archive of the brain. Once a habit stabilizes inside the basal ganglia, the mental energy required to execute it drops to zero. You no longer need to motivate yourself or use willpower. The behavior runs with the exact same fluid, thoughtless ease as breathing or blinking, locking consistency into your biological hardware. Stage 6. The neurological craving shift. Stage 6 marks the absolute point of no return in behavioral programming, the neurological craving shift. In the initial stages of a habit, the dopamine release occurred only when you received the reward. But as the loop becomes deeply wired, an incredible shift happens inside your neural pathways. The dopamine spike migrates. It begins to release the exact millisecond you perceive the cue, completely bypassing the wait for the response. Your brain has created a permanent anticipation channel. The cue and the reward have become chemically fused in your subconscious. This explains why bad habits are incredibly hard to resist. Your brain is already experiencing the phantom pleasure of the reward before your hands ever move, creating an intense neurological pull to finish the loop. Stage 7. The identity alignment. True, permanent behavioral reengineering requires Stage 7, identity alignment. As long as you are forcing a habit through external metrics, your success is highly fragile. If you tell yourself, I am trying to run every day because I want to lose weight, you are relying on a temporary goal. The magic happens when the habit alters your core self-image. The vocabulary shifts from an action to a statement of being. You stop saying, I am trying to write a book, and start stating, I am a writer. You stop saying, I am trying to resist a cigarette, and state, I am a non-smoker. When a behavior aligns perfectly with your internal identity, protecting that habit becomes a matter of protecting who you are, making consistency completely effortless. Stage 8. The environmental resistance test. No habit exists inside a vacuum. Stage 8 is the inevitable environmental resistance test. This is the moment your newly established routine is thrown out of its perfect laboratory conditions and forced to confront the chaos of real life. You go on a chaotic business vacation, experience a sudden personal crisis, or get hit with a brutal wave of work stress. If your habit was built purely on rigid timelines and perfect conditions, it will shatter instantly. Behavioral reengineering requires you to build habits that are highly flexible. You create scaled-down versions of your goals. If you don't have time for a 60-minute workout during a crisis, you execute a 5-minute home stretch. You maintain the continuity of the loop at all costs, proving to your brain that the habit is non-negotiable. Stage 9. Habit stacking and neural architecture. Once a single habit is perfectly stabilized and aligned with your identity, you unlock Stage 9 habit stacking. This is the elite method used by choice architects to build massive, highly productive routines without burning any willpower. Instead of inventing a new environmental cue from scratch, you anchor your new habit onto an old established automated loop. You look at your brain's existing neural highways and use them to hitchhike a new behavior. The formula is absolute. After I pour my morning coffee, arrhythmit, I will immediately open my journal and write 1 page new emet. By stacking new desires onto old, stable neurological foundations, you expand your productive architecture effortlessly, building a highly optimized lifestyle brick by brick. Stage 10. Absolute automation. The final stage of behavioral reengineering is the achievement of absolute automation. At this ultimate peak, the habit has become a core component of your daily operating system. You no longer think about the effort, you don't track the days, and you don't require an ounce of motivation to begin. In fact, at this stage, trying not to execute the habit causes more psychological friction than doing it. If you skip your morning reading or miss your gym session, your system experiences an intense sense of imbalance. You have achieved behavioral freedom. The the compound interest of your automated routines begins to pay out massive dividends in your physical health, financial freedom, and mental clarity, carrying your life toward greatness completely on autopilot.